Well, at least I can do that. Hi, everybody. It's great to have everybody here on World Mental Health Awareness Day. And I'm joined with a good friend, Dr. Joanna Robson, who I've known for quite a long time and had the pleasure of working with off and on a number of interesting cases over the years. And Dr. Joanna is a veterinarian, equine veterinarian in Northern California, and has a integrated health practice. And as I said, we've worked together on a number of cases. And Dr. Joanna has a long stream of letters after her name. I was on her website recently, and there are lots and lots of letters on there.
Too many.
One of the ones that's really interesting and somewhat newer is ECPR, which is, you look at that and you think, okay, I can figure out like what some of these, veterinary acronyms are after. And I saw that one time and I was like, ECPR? Like equine CPR, like right? Anyway, but that's not what it is, and I'm sure she'll tell us what it is in a minute. The reason for doing this today is it is World Mental Health Awareness Day, and there is thankfully a growing awareness of an acceptance of mental health and wellness, and that it's okay to speak up when we're struggling with our mental health. And one of the reasons I wanted to chat with Dr. Joanna today is, I went to grad school at UC Davis. I worked in the vet school at UC Davis. I have a lot of friends who are veterinarians. I spent a lot of time around veterinarians. And there's a big problem in the veterinary community with, very sadly, veterinarians taking their own lives. And mental health is not very, I get emotional about it. I've lost people I know. And so it's something that I, feel strongly about. And so when I saw that today was World Mental Health Awareness Day, I thought, we often think, well, what can we do about veterinarian mental health? And I think we forget sometimes that as owners, we have a big role to play in veterinarians' mental health. So I'm hoping we can chat a little bit about that and maybe what we can do as owners. But Joanna, maybe we can start off a little bit about, what's your view of World Mental Health Awareness Day?
Well, first of all, I'm just so excited to see you.
And it's great to see you too. It's been
my friend.
Long time.
Yeah, just awesome to be here. And I love that you reached out to me about this topic. And this day, this World Mental Health Awareness Day is a global day. And it's really about bringing awareness, shining a light on the global pandemic of mental health issues. And allowing a platform for those that are involved in mental health as therapists or coordinators, or have different nonprofits or organizations that are working to promote mental health awareness, to have a chance to literally just talk about what it is that they're doing, and to also raise awareness that it is a global problem, and how can we bring services and opportunities to those who are suffering on a global scale. So it's really an amazing day, and I appreciate that you reached out to me to help share this conversation.
Yeah, I think it's important.
It's incredibly important, and one of the most important things of all, of course, is breaking the stigma of just talking about it. And I know going through school, even, it was just something that nobody discussed. And I'm well aware that both myself and many of my classmates struggled with anxiety, whether it was test anxiety or depression, the pressure in school to perform and achieve. And particularly my class, we were all selected based on our scores. Our particular class was an experiment on choosing based on their academics. And holy cow, did that bring out some interesting issues with the perfectionism and the overachievers. Very, very interesting. So I'm happy to delve into this topic a little deeper and hopefully bring some awareness to our clients and our colleagues about what's going on in the industry and what people can do to get involved and to make a difference.
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, I'm fairly aware of the problems within the veterinary community of, unfortunately, people taking their own lives, but a lot of people may not be. So what are the statistics on that?
So we are fortunate, whether I say fortunate, although it's research done on an unfortunate subject, but we are fortunate to have people investing time and resources into hardcore research on this topic. And what we know is statistically, that veterinarians are 2.7 times more likely than general population to die by suicide, that female veterinarians are 3.5% higher than general population, and males are 2.1% higher than general population. And in a 2020 study that was done, 1 in 6 veterinarians have contemplated taking their own lives, contemplating dying by suicide. So 1 in 6 is a pretty shocking number. In a prior study that was done, I can't remember honestly the exact end date, but they looked at deaths in the veterinarian population, and at that point in time, the number was 400 veterinarians who had died by suicide across this particular time frame. But the good news is, in the more recent years, with Merck becoming involved and the AVMA, the American Veterinary Medical Association, becoming involved, we're getting more specific details of more recent years. So that's going to really help us start to turn the tide on this, looking at what are the underlying causes, what are more specific statistics, and how do we tackle it. So again, an unfortunate topic, but fortunate that we've shed enough light on this now to have people heavily involved in figuring out what's happening and why.
Yeah, I mean, the last AAP convention, which is the big equine veterinary convention that I went to, was I think 2019, and I've been the 3 years prior to that, so 17, 18, and 19, and that I'm aware of. 19 was the first year that I noticed that there were a number of sessions on mental health.
Right.
And that was a big, I kind of went, whoa, okay, that's new, kind of thing. So yeah, there's definitely an awareness that, which is great to see that those things are being offered as part of continuing education opportunities at conferences and things, which again, I think will help lessen the stigma.
Absolutely.
Surrounding it.
I think you're right. I think it was right around 2018, 2019 that we started seeing that shift towards, oh my gosh, there's actually a topic on the schedule addressing mental health. Like, ooh, it used to be so taboo. Right? Nobody talked about that. There was business management, but there wasn't life management and, self-care skills. And it was 2019 in the fall that I went to the American Med Association conference on veterinary well-being. And that was very eye-opening because I sat in a room just full of beautiful beings that were veterinarians, vet support staff, vet students, but also human mental health specialists. You had social workers, veterinary social workers, LMFTs, all coming together to have a discussion about the problem in the industry and what to do about it. And the positives were that everybody was there to have the discussion. The challenges, of course, are that it's a bit like turning the Titanic. People are there and we want to make the changes, but we're looking at a behemoth in front of us of how do we do this at both the micro level and the macro level.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So, you mentioned about the stress of the school part of it and it, being very competitive sometimes and just high stress and that, but why else is this happening?
That's a seminar in and of itself.
I'm sure it's many, many reasons and everybody's story is somewhat individual. But are there some kind of big overarching, causes? I mean, I know that, for example, financial concerns are big, anybody's ever looked into going to vet school. I mean, it's, shocking. And I think there's this misnomer that vets make a lot of money and it's just not true. And people graduate with so much debt and then, really salaries are not, don't keep up with that level of debt. And so that's very difficult and stressful, I'm sure. And, so are there some other, are there some sort of overarching large things that tend to weigh on this?
There are overarching causes and it's definitely multifaceted. It's great that you bring that up. It's not just one cause. It's not just convenience euthanasia. It's not just student debt. There are all kinds of factors that play a role, but you've certainly hit on a major one so that we know at this point that the average, so it is average student debt load on graduation is $140,000.
Wow.
Because that's an average, it could be as high as 200 or 250, right? So everything. but 140K on graduation with an average starting salary of 65,000.
Yeah.
So you're bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, you graduate, you've got this debt, you run out, you get your first job, and then suddenly you go, oh, wow, I've also got mortgage expenses or household expenses, and maybe a vehicle now that I've got to pay for, practice or personal, and you hit the ground running. And then some, not all, of course, but some people realize very quickly that maybe they've bitten off more than they could chew as far as expectation of what veterinary life was going to be like versus actual realities of that. And then you bring in like imposter syndrome and other mental health issues. And that can be absolutely overwhelming for people when they realize they have a whole family to support. And they also have debt to pay off that sometimes amounts to the cost of a house. And how are they going to do that on a low starting salary? So no, one of the biggest attacks on social media is, oh, if vets really cared, they treat Fluffy for free and they're just in it for the money. And I will contest that veterinarians across the board don't get into this career to be wealthy. It's not a profession chosen.
No.
Make a lot of money, especially when you have things out there like IT. You could go into tech or you could go into real estate. Then yes, there are other causes. We do know that euthanasia plays a factor. Convenience euthanasia, the amount of euthanasia, particularly around holiday times that we see. Shelter veterinarians should not be left out of this conversation. Very, very difficult when you're having to deal with populations of animals. Laboratory animal veterinarians as well, who see very little limelight. They're in this conversation. And then even population veterinarians. So you think about food and farm animal when, like in the UK, they had foot and mouth disease. Had these other issues where veterinarians have been responsible for massive depopulation of animals in a very rapid period of time.
Absolutely. Yeah. And actually, when I worked at UC Davis, I worked in modeling of foot and mouth disease.
Oh gosh.
And worked directly with veterinarians who had from the US who had gone over to the UK, some of the regulatory veterinarians who'd gone over and worked over there, and their personal stories were just heart-wrenching.
Yeah, it actually gives me goosebumps hearing you say that. It's just thinking about colleagues like facing that amount of stress and trauma. And of course, when you're in the moment, you're focused, you have to do a job, you're very compartmentalized. And then it can hit people like a tidal wave as soon as that is over. And from a social work standpoint, it's not just the animals, you're dealing with people's livelihoods.
And that's what they spoke about. Yeah, I remember one in particular saying, she walked into a kitchen with some older farmer in the, north of England, Cumbria kind of area, which is hit really hard. And they, basically sat down over, they had just told him that he was going to have to euthanize his whole herd. And, and then they invited her in for tea and they sat around the table drinking tea. And he just sort of took it as, okay, this is what we have to do. And she's like, I just delivered some of the most, terrible information possible. And, it was received with such grace, but I mean, it was just such an emotional roller coaster of emotions for them too.
Incredibly trying. And present time too, in the last year or two with COVID, I spoke with a swine veterinarian who was talking about the challenges of shipping, transport. Suddenly we were in COVID and there was no market for people's hogs. And again, the same thing, mass euthanasia across the board and just horrible things that people were going through. And the general public doesn't know. They don't have access to these stories. They don't know, they don't understand. It's entire supply chains that are affected, from farmer and veterinarian, all the way through all these industries affected by COVID as well. So very heart-wrenching. We've got, and I think
it's worth mentioning that I would assume that most of you get into veterinary medicine because you have a very strong, compassionate side.
Right. They call it the noble profession. We're in it to save lives, right? You want to do anything that you can to make an animal better, to help a family member, a human family member, and care for their pet. And absolutely gut-wrenching. And along those lines, then you have the emotional blackmail tied into that financial aspect, where you have a family who comes in with their pet and they can't afford to do X, Y, and Z, even if you're, trying to provide every range of possibilities to help. And their own stress, of course, emotional distress in that situation and not being able to pay oftentimes gets projected back onto the veterinarian or the technician or the support staff. We have to talk about the receptionists as well.
Right.
Front
Yeah.
desk staff about, well, you don't really care. And if you really cared, you do it for free, and you guys hate animals. And those kinds of comments can be incredibly difficult and challenging and piercing to the people on the other side when they're really there to just do the best they can for this pet. But unfortunately, medicine costs money as well.
Right. Yeah, no, it does. Yeah, for sure. So the good news is that there are programs available now because of the awareness to help support, which kind of brings me back to one of my opening comments about, all the letters and this eCPR, which is not equine CPR. So what the heck is it?
So the E in eCPR stands for emotional CPR. And I didn't know what it stood for in the beginning either. And it was a number of serendipitous things that I won't go into here that led me to this program, which was offered at the University of Tennessee College of Veterinary Medicine, supported by Dr. Elizabeth Strand, who's really been at the forefront of promoting the veterinary social work programs in everything from private hospitals to university settings. So there are many programs out there looking at how can we support the human aspect of this industry-wide problem. And emotional CPR is a global training program. It's been in all different industries, from first responders to police force and criminal justice, schools and youth, children programs, lay people. And ultimately it's CPR, which is connect, empower, revitalize. And we are teaching people through lived experience too. That's what sets this program apart. It was established by people with lived experience with depression, suicidality, schizophrenia, how to literally sit and be fully present with somebody in emotional distress. So this could be colleague to colleague, peer to peer, doctor to client, could be somebody, a complete stranger on the street. And I have had to use those skills a couple of times now. One with somebody, I didn't know who they were. I was at the gym, sitting in a sauna, and somebody suddenly needed someone to just sit and be present with her emotional distress. And the other situation was also at a gym, but a gym member who was going through some suicidality issues. And bottom line take home message is most people don't want to be fixed. They want to be heard.
Right.
And there are other programs available. Of course, there's QPR, which is question, persuade, refer, which is also offered, through the AVMA for free. Life Talk, mental health first aid. There's many programs available. Some programs are more geared towards acute listening, awareness and listening for hearing cues that then maybe you want to help that person get professional help. Emotional CPR is more guided towards just sitting and being fully present so that person has a chance to express themselves and reconnect mind to heart. Because most of us are cut off at the neck, and especially in veterinary medicine, and being a researcher and a nutritionist as well, we're up here all the time thinking of solutions and what can we do to advise and fix. And with emotional CPR, it's not advising and fixing anymore. It's feeling what's going on. And humans these days, we are so disconnected from feeling. We wander around just completely in our heads, or
we think we're connected.
I was gonna say in this right here, and
that's not real connection.
We're lonely. We're lonelier
Right.
now as a population than ever before, even though our technology and our Zooms are, quote unquote, better than ever, but we're lonely.
Well, and we try to fix it with this, right? And that's why this is why this is so addictive, because it gives us that false feeling that we're connected, but it doesn't connect you in the right way.
Correct.
So yeah, for sure. So it sounds like eCPR is something that really anybody can to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And I appreciate you giving me a chance to speak about it. And it's not to knock any of the other programs. Certainly anybody considering helping other people, do some research and see what's out there. There's tons of things online. But one of the beauties of emotional CPR is, yes, anybody can go through the program. And there are trainings being held all the time. We have a huge calendar. Trainings are generally small group, anywhere from about 7 to 15 people, which really creates a nice intimate setting, very protected setting. And it is experiential. So there is some didactic training involved and some discussion, but quite a bit of it is what we call real plays as opposed to role play. So as opposed to having a script, we're actually practicing what is it like to not only share with someone what's really happening inside, but what's it like to be received and be the receiver in that scenario. And I love these experiences. I have another training that I'm hosting next week, and every single one is different. And it's always fascinating to watch the shifts just over a couple of days from people dropping out of their heads and into their hearts and into their bodies. And it can be a roller coaster, no joke. It can be tough.
Oh, I bet.
Starts people on a paradigm shift of what's it like to just really be present and listen to somebody.
Right. Well, it's interesting you say that. So I follow a horse trainer called Warwick Schiller, and he was challenging people during COVID to just go sit with their horses with no agenda. So many people found that so difficult, right? And would say things like, well, I sat there for 2 hours and he never even looked at me. And respond and say, well, then you had an agenda, because your agenda was that they had to look at you. And so I would just as part of this conversation, throw out there that I think, doing this work really benefits your relationship with your horse too. How we present ourselves to our horses, where can we actually just be present?
Yeah.
Like actually just listen, can we see and hear, without any judgment, what's right in front of us, right? And that applies to our horses too. So just throw that out there.
I love that aspect of it. That you bring that up is just phenomenal. And I'm noticing even in a Zoom conversation with you too, I try so hard to watch awareness of my own mind in these conversations, that most of our tendencies are geared towards, what am I going to say next? Oh, I'm often personal story. Claire just said this. Oh yeah, I can relate to that. And then I just missed some of what you said, right? So much of this practice. And I love like the mindful riders aspect, or, being a mindful equestrian, being present with your horse or being present with the person that you're with, is watching that activity in the mind and where it takes us to the future, to the past. What am I going to say next? Oh, Claire just said she has this problem. You know what? I went through the same thing. And so I'm going to recommend to her that she could do X, Y, and Z. But when I tell you those things, that leaves you feeling like you weren't even heard.
Right.
Hang on a sec. I was trying to share my story, and now you're telling me your story. Well, I don't really want to talk about X, Y, and Z because maybe I've already tried that, or I'm not interested in that. I was just trying to share something.
Yeah, and it's a real, I catch myself doing it all the time. It's such a human thing, and it's very difficult not to do. It's a very good thing to challenge ourselves to do. We think we listen, but we're not really listening.
It is a practice. It is
it's definitely, and it's a mental health, it's a mental practice that we can all do. And it takes work. So what I really wanted to get at, and to kind of sort of move towards wrapping this up, I think we, some of us hopefully don't see our vets too often, right? If things are going well, we maybe see them twice a year, but some of us, unfortunately, will see them more often than that. But, what can we do as owners to help, knowing that veterinarians, are in professions that really can challenge their mental well-being? What can we be helpful? How can we help with that? And I one of the reasons I wanted to do this today was I caught myself recently. I had a veterinary emergency and had to call our emergency vet. And her response, I was a little surprised by. When I hung up the phone and I said to somebody, I'm like, really? I sort of made some comments, and afterwards I thought, that was a little mean. Like I maybe just woke her up. She could have been up all night with a colic, and and I just found myself like there was no reason for me to have made that comment. And it was a flippant, off the cuff comment, right? But on reflection, I was like, that was a little mean spirited. And it was sort of said, out of funniness, but I was like, that was not a necessary thing for me to have said. And it was just out in the ether. But, I checked myself and I was like, that was, that wasn't really okay to say. And so I think my reason for saying that is that we all do this, right? I'm no better than anybody else. Like we'll all make oh my God, my vet, whatever. And on a grander scale than that, I know people take that to social media. It can be very damaging. So, just as I really think these little things that we put out there add up, right? And they go out into the universe and they matter.
Right.
On the tiniest thing. And then there's also larger things we could do too. So what are some things that we can do as owners to, maybe support our vets better?
It's interesting. I find myself getting a little teary, a little emotional, listening to you say that. First thing I want to do is just reach through the screen, like give you a huge hug, recognizing that it's also okay when you were in your time of need to experience what you experienced. So certainly when you go through an emergency like that, it's a time of stress. And so it is a normal and a natural reaction to probably say, something along the lines of what you said, because tensions are running high. And I want to give you a second hug then for having the mental fortitude and awareness to be able to take a step back from that and a deep breath and process the situation and recognize what happened. And I think if I had a biggest wish for everybody on the whole, it would be just that, this power of the pause, this mindful pause, this mindful presence to respond, not react. Can we, in those moments of stress, just take one deep breath and take a step back and go, okay, here I am. This is what's happening. My being aggressive or emotionally blackmailing people or pounding my fists on the counter is not going to result in faster service. And in fact, will probably get you shoved to the back of the line, right?
Right.
And what you just said about your vet, maybe she was asleep or maybe this was going on. We don't know. Right. Every person we pass on the streets carries their own baggage.
Right.
Has their own experience. And it could be the receptionist you're talking to that day just lost a family member or had to put a pet down, or, the veterinarian who you've called has also just come off of 3 euthanasias.
Right.
They're the only vet on call. So it's a multifaceted answer. And yet I think really focusing it down, if we look at human mental health on the whole, it's awareness. It comes back to that mindfulness again, which is a bit of a buzzword right now, but it's really about embodied presence and awareness to recognize what's happening inside me right now. And can I take that split second to recognize what may be happening for those other people? That also goes into a bit of right speech. So whether it's email, leaving a review online, just speaking to someone in conversation, is it true? Is it helpful? Is it kind? A lot of people become keyboard warriors when they can hide behind the screen and blast a 1-star review for something that happened. And currently, although this is starting to shift, there's been no recourse for the veterinarians or the professionals involved to respond to that. We are seeing that shift now. When someone reads a review, even taking that with a grain of salt, deep breath, read that review. Is that really true? There's 2 sides to every story, right? And oftentimes you're only presented with the one side.
Right.
I would also add that, especially in my own practice, and I know many of my colleagues, I'm very blessed and fortunate to have excellent clients. And what makes them excellent is their understanding, their patience. I do the best I can to fit people in everywhere I can, but sometimes it's going to be a month before I can get there if it's not an emergency. And most people are kind and willing and patient enough to understand that.
Right.
The biggest downfall for most relationships, be it inside the practice or out, is communication. Right. So it really comes down to clear communication about what's going on.
Right.
So I think clients on the whole, if they want to be helpful, it's taking those 2 extra seconds to say thank you.
Yeah.
I really appreciate how hard your team works, how hard you work. I appreciate what you've done for my pet or my horse. Thank you for being there when I needed you.
Mhm.
Yeah, the box of donuts and the box of chocolates helps, especially the holidays. But it doesn't need to be food bribery. It's literally taking those 2 seconds to say, thank you. I know you're
Right.
super busy today, and I really appreciate what happened.
Yeah.
And if for some reason there was a poorer experience or something that happened, being able to come back and say, look, I'm really sorry for the way I reacted. I
Mhm.
felt super stressed that day. My pet was in dire need. My horse was having an emergency. I'm really sorry that I snapped the way I did. I apologize. Because the general population right now, especially again with COVID, is under so much stress.
Yeah.
So much stress and pressure. And I would like to add, I know I'm going on a bit, but one note that I would like to add as well. I was just discussing with my therapist this morning, because I do also seek counseling to help with my mental health and well-being, about how at the end of the day, it falls on the individual to seek help and support.
Right.
And those who are dealing with their own individual heavy traumas may be more likely to lash out or act irresponsibly or irrationally in some situations. They're feeling pandemic pressure. They're feeling financial pressure. They've
Right.
experienced loss of children or relatives, or they're dealing with a sick parent, or they just themselves got a diagnosis of cancer or some major medical.
Right.
When we're dealing with those kinds of pressures, our filters, right? Our boundaries are going to be more porous and more weak. We as the professionals are not especially in the veterinary community, we're not going to be able to help you necessarily with those things, right?
Right.
There are human professionals, licensed mental health professionals who have the training to support people through that.
Yeah.
And social workers as well. It falls on the individual to be open and willing to seek out professional support to help guide them through those scenarios, which then in turn creates the ripple effect that helps all of us in turn to have better relationships and healthy relationships.
Yeah, absolutely. So, just as an ending point, if a client is concerned about their veterinarian, or really anybody, what's your advice to them?
To not be afraid to speak up. I think so many people are fearful. What do I say? What if I say the wrong thing? What if I tip this person over the edge? Oh, it's not my business. I don't want to get involved. And the truth is, simply showing that you care makes all the difference in the world. And better to be wrong, right? Maybe somebody's having a bad day and they're actually, no, okay, I just, I'm thinking about a phone call. At least you asked, and then that person knows, oh my gosh, this person actually cared. They paid attention. Right. And ultimately, it's not about saying or knowing the right words. It's simply being present. And if I was concerned about, again, you said it could be, their veterinarian or anybody. It could be anybody. Right. So I may not know exactly what's going on in that person's world, but if I'm willing to show up and say, hey, are you okay? Do you want to talk about it? Even if that person says no, I might follow up with, how about if I just sat with you for a minute? You don't have to say anything at all, but I just want to sit next to you for a minute and just let you know I'm here. I'm here. And maybe you can send a text message to me later and just check in and let me know that you're okay.
Yeah, that's very powerful. Makes me.
It's powerful stuff, and it's okay for us to feel a bit of emotion around it. It's tough, and we're all dealing with the weight of the world on our shoulders right now. And being able to lean into that and just show up. Claire, you doing okay? I've got a lot on my mind. Do you want to talk about it? You know what? I'm not sure I can deal with all that right now. Okay. How about we just go out for coffee?
Right.
Well, that's all it is. You know what? I'll make a deal with it. You don't have to talk about any of that stuff if you don't want to, but let's just get together.
Mm-hmm. And the thing is, you open the door then, right? Maybe 2 weeks later, they'll call you and they'll say, you know what, can I take you up on that coffee? Or can I take you up on that conversation?
Yeah, oftentimes. And we're lucky to have forums like the Not One More Vet and some of the other veterinary forums online. You know, it's a little different in type and text than face-to-face, certainly.
Right.
But there are avenues out there, and for general population as well. Even the suicide hotlines, you know, when people are so desperate and so alone, to just reach out and feel that tiny little bit of connection, that tiny little bit of hope.
Yeah, so I think that's the big message, right? We're not alone.
Yeah. And I just read this morning a quote from the Depression Project, and it reads, "This is just a reminder that 25% of people battle a mental illness. So even though it might feel like it, you are not alone." So remembering that while we often feel very isolated in what we're going through, that there are many other people out there as well, again, carrying their own baggage and just trying to get through each day, one foot in front of the other.
Right. And I think that's a big message too, right? I mean, it's something I always try, you know, give people the benefit of the doubt, right? Give people grace. Like you said earlier, you don't know what other people are going through. So that's something I to kind of, you know, give people, you know, give people the benefit of the doubt, and then sort of, you know, seek to, you know, be curious, right? Don't just assume that, you know. It's just, you know, give people the benefit of the doubt, and then, you know, have a curiosity about what's going on with them.
Yeah, absolutely. I call it grace and space. Give them grace and then space to open up and just process that. And then again, the power of the pause, you know, just taking that one deep breath or that one step back, whether it's standing in line in the grocery store, you know, you've got 5 people in front of you and people are fumbling around. Okay, can I just be here with what's happening in this moment? And it's not easy. I'm not saying it's
no, it's not.
It's not easy. And same thing in the veterinarian's office, when you go in and suddenly an emergency rushes past you and you've already been waiting for an hour. It's so easy to get angry about that. And that's normal and natural. There's nothing wrong with that. And there may only be one veterinarian on duty. They might be short staffed that day, and they might have 3 pets in the back that they're trying to deal with, and the emergency that just came through the door. We are doing the best that we can.
We're all only human at the end of the day. So, yeah. It's been great talking with you. I really appreciate you taking the time.
Oh, likewise.
Today and on this topic. I think it's a great topic and an important one. And hopefully, you know, somebody will listen to this and take some inspiration about it and think about taking that deep breath when they really need it most. So
I hope so.
Yeah. So anyway, and as you said, there are lots of resources online for people to look up if they want more information. So I would encourage people to do that. It's there's some really good stuff out there.
There's some excellent resources, and I always put it out there too. I mean, if people want more information about any of the programs, not just emotional CPR, but in my any of it, they are more than welcome to email me or message me. And you know, I've even put myself out there, even if you're a complete stranger and you just need someone to talk to, message me. No.
Yeah, that's great. What's the best way for people to find you? To go to your website,
the website, certainly. I'm also on Facebook. So I have the 2 websites. I have ecprforlife.com, which is all about emotional CPR and mental health. And then my business website, which is inspiritusequine.com. And if this it gets posted, I can certainly put that in the comments for people to reach me. And message just under my name. So happy to continue these conversations. It's so important.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, we'll see if anyone has any questions or anything, we can make sure we get those answered as well once I figure out the technology. Share it with everybody.
Not alone, Claire.
All right. Well, that's awesome. I'm going to hit the stop record here. Thanks again. I really appreciate it.
Oh, I so appreciated it. Just awesome to get to have this conversation with you. Thank you so much.
Super. Thanks.